Roger. Welcome to part 2, aka episode 13. If you missed part 1, you can find it here. In the last episode, I went over how I got a chance in a million to be part of the epic Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 2 video. I tackled the first day of shooting, which was at Oregon Motorsports Park, and how awesome a track that was. Got to do my first little bits of acting, which I hated, and finally headed off for our second location in southern Washington. If you haven't seen any of the Scotch and a Beers before, you can check all of those out here. And please, if you enjoy these at all, subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you know when I release these, hopefully every Monday, but sometimes I suck and it gets delayed. But before I get into this video, let's get into my Scotch and my beer. Now I have chosen the Smirnoff Ice Red, White, and Berry limited edition blue raspberry, cherry, and citrus flavored adult beverage. And I really feel like this is something that Officer Dan would drink on a daily basis. Cheers to that. And I'd ice myself right now, but I don't want to get up out of this comfy chair. You know Otter Pops? Like when the ice melts at the very bottom and you have that last little tiny sip, squeeze it and it goes up the sides, and that's what this tastes like, but with alcohol in it. So it's actually much, much better than the regular Smirnoff Ice. So kudos to them for making a tasty beverage that reminds me of my childhood. And for my Scotch, another import from when I was traveling over in Europe. This is the Jura single malt Scotch, the Paps 19 year. It's a deep mahogany gold with a complex finish, matured in American white oak ex-bourbon barrels, enhanced by casks which held 40-year-old Pedro Ximenez Sherry, cask number 40. Hot darn. It says it's got powerful aromas of ginger cake, vanilla, and balsamic, followed by spiced pear, fig syrup, and mocha with roasted walnut in the aftertaste. This is a complex Scotch from Jura. Very, very dark color-wise. And most of the Scotches I've actually had from Jura are fantastic. What do you want? You get no whiskey. I can definitely taste the vanilla and the ginger cake. The pear comes on afterwards, and they are not joking about that. That spiced pear is actually pretty strong. Taste some sort of syrup. I wouldn't be able to tell you if it was from figs or not. For being such a dark Scotch, and you can see the water interacting with it, so I'm assuming this is a pretty oily Scotch. The little bits of ice in here are actually going to make it stronger. That is a damn fine beverage, people. It's like candy. Now this Scotch and a Beer is a little bit more special than all of the other ones. The one leading up to this in episode 12, I was becoming Officer Dan, but I hadn't actually become the character yet. And I define becoming Officer Dan as the moment that I shaved into my mustache and had to do the interview sequence for Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 2 for the first time. So that is when I officially turned into Officer Dan. And back to the story. Once again, we're up at 4:30 in the morning and we head out to what I now know as Mary Hill Loops Road. We all pile in some of the crew vehicles and we cruise up to the top. It's a twisty, narrow beauty of a road that snakes, see what I did there, all the way up to the top and then dead ends into a gravel parking lot. Now this road is owned by the nearby Mary Hill Museum. It's normally used for hill climb races, downhill longboarding, and other assorted fun activities that need to have a long windy road and a hill involved. It was laid way back in 1911 and it was the first paved road in the entire state of Washington. So those are some pretty cool facts. After we arrived at the top and kind of walked over to the edge, you could see this ribbon of pavement that just looked beautifully amazing going all the way down back to where we started. And I started to get super excited. As we were driving back down, I was already thinking in my head, I can link this corner and I can link this corner and these corners should flow together very well. And I'm super, super stoked to just get in a car and start driving the hell out of this road. I'm also seeing some rather large drop-offs on one side or the other. The Mustang only has a roll bar, so hopefully I don't go flying off one of those. Now once we were back down, we got some breakfast in us, and Matt Sanders laid out our shots for the day. Now we were going to be here for 3 days, so there was no need to rush like we did at the racetrack to get all of the shots that we needed. We could be a little bit more relaxed and actually make the shots count. Now Matt needed to take Nick and Ernie in and again fill in all these B-roll shots of rolling into the road and into the city and these things of them going by the camera. So off they went to go do that, and your boy was free to roam this amazing strip of asphalt. So we fired up the old S13 and off I went. I just casually cruised the road 3 or 4 times, going up and down, just kind of getting the rhythm of the road in my head, so that when I was drifting, I could make corrections if need be to not send myself off of a 40-foot cliff. On my 3rd lap up, I decided to go ahead and start drifting on a section that I thought would be the best set of corners to link together. And my God, they were perfect. First try, I was able to link like 4 or 5 corners together. There was a long straightaway that I just kind of left alone, and then I was able to go from the 3/4 mark all the way to the top, which was like 6 turns in a row, back to back to back to back to back, and I was pumped. Turned around, headed back down, practiced again. At this point, I am in love with this road. Now it's around 1 p.m. We all break for lunch, and I'd gone through every set of tires that I'd brought for the S13 except for 2 new sets of 245 4018 Federals, because Matt Sanders wanted to do some follow shots of me in the S13 to kind of gauge what he wanted to get with the Mustang. Off we went back up onto the mountain. I was feeling good. Everything was great. Laid down the lines for Matt. Matt got these epic shots following behind the 240, and the S13 had never looked better. So I was comfortable. We were getting the footage that we needed to get, but would I be able to do this in a brand new car that I had limited seat time in, and throwing 2 guys on motorcycles into the mix whom I had never drifted with before? Cars, yes. Solo, yes. Motorcycles, new territory for me. Only seen it on the internet. Now satisfied with the camera test in the S13, they'd gotten all the footage that they needed with the B-roll stuff, with the motorcycle guys, and we decided to head back in town, have some dinner, have a talk about what we were going to shoot the next day. Now at dinner, Matt said we'd be doing the logical thing and start at the bottom of the hill and shoot our shots all the way until we hit the top. He also said we'd be doing my dialogue. And I'm like, what? Dialogue? Nobody told me anything about dialogue. So his next question was, what accents can you do? And I laid out Scottish, I laid out Russian, I laid out redneck, and he was like, yeah, those 2. And I was like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing then. We'll shoot both and figure out which one edits together in the end the best. Okay, whatever you need, Matt. And then at the end of that session, we went outside of the restaurant and we packed leaves into garbage bags. And I'm like, why are we doing this? Did we not pay for our meals? What's the story here? Are we just working for this restaurant for free? So after that, we piled our bags of leaves into the cars and we headed back to the hotel to get some sleep because it was going to be yet another early day. So the first shot we attempted to shoot in the morning was the J-turn as the motorcycles passed by me flipping on the lights and taking off after the motorcycles. Cool, got it. Understand what I need to do. So first shot out, the motorcycles pass me, I do the J-turn, I do this weird sideways crab walk because the road has this coating on it. And this coating was super, super slippery up until it got to a certain temperature, and then it was the most grippy thing that you'd ever felt. It also smells like mustard when you burn it. So the clothes, this helmet, these pants, they still have that weird mustard type smell impregnated into it. And no, I've never washed them. And yes, these are the original clothes from the Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 2 shoot. So technically I'm cosplaying myself right now. Cheers to me for being an idiot. I do the J-turn, I'm doing this crazy weird sideways burnout and it feels like I'm going nowhere. I grab second gear and something broke. I limp it back. It was an axle. We called around to every auto parts store in the area, and the closest axles were an hour away. So we are now on a 2-hour delay, whilst a crew member has to drive into this town, grab the axles, and bring them back. We got one extra just in case something happened later on in the shoot. So since we're on a self-induced 2-hour delay, they send me into the rig to don my first ever mustache. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and chug this because I'm an idiot. I will be needing to wash that out, but I'm glad this did not break. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down here for safety. And at this very moment, I have become...
My name's Officer Dan. I'm with the High Plains Police Department, PD for short.
I'd always had the helmet on, I'd had the full uniform on, and all of the shots had just been of my hands and or feet. But since we had all of this downtime with the axle that I broke, they now wanted to do interviews with me as whatever character I decided that this person was going to be. So they pulled me aside, set the cameras up, and then proceeded to film an interview with Officer Diane.
How fast can you go on that thing?
As fast as I want.
Now all of the clips of me talking throughout the entire video came from this very, very short interview. And apparently the rednecky version of me was much better than the Russian version of me because that won in the end as the choice for the edit. So I'm super, super nervous. I'm conscientious about my first mustache ever, and I've never been on camera before. So Tom says, just relax and be the redneck that God intended you to be. And I said, okay, you know, I think I can do that. So I answered all of the questions as a police officer redneck with no clue on how the real world works, personified.
I'm chasing some hoodlums on some motorcycles. They've been causing a ruckus and general mayhem all around this here county.
We did a few takes of that. We did some of the Russian outtakes. I sat in the car and did all of this stupid Russian street actor who was posing as a police officer to try to catch these dudes on motorcycles. And it made no sense whatsoever, but we filmed it anyway, and I think we got a kick out of actually making that happen. I've got some of that B-roll footage right here.
So how'd you get to America?
I took boat from Minsk. Minsk. I just said mink. Mink. Like a mink's coat, yes? It's very bad news. You can't even pronounce your own homeland. Well, I am a foreign exchange cop. This new program just started this year. My government thought it would be a very good idea if I came over here to be a police officer.
And why are you chasing these motorcycle guys?
Because it seemed like a good thing to do, you know? There's breaking laws and peeling outs all over the place. So these guys need to be apprehended, and they need to be dealt the full long arm of the law.
What do you guys do to motorcycle outlaws in Russia?
Well, back in the motherland, they put in a pit. They're urinated on in public.
What kind of... Oh, do you ride a motorcycle?
I sat on one once, yes. It was mostly for a Santa Claus picture.
What kind of clues have you found in this case?
Well, we found bits of fragments of chains, we found tires, we found peel-out marks. I mean, like I said, these guys been chirping brodies across 2 states.
What does the tire mark smell like?
Tire mark smells like so many burnt goat cheese.
Russian Officer Dan, my friends. And thank God the axle came back when it did, because I could climb back into the car with my helmet on and fade away from these cameras that were now constantly pointed at my face. I guess one last shot that we did was me eating the donut at the very, very, very end of the video. It did make my mouth dry, and it was the last donut, so we literally only had one take to do it. I sold the living shit out of that shot though, people. Now, while I was doing all of this interview crap and trying to be an actor, Nick and Ernie were out filming with the GoPros, and they were sitting over there tossing the cameras back and forth, which is where I got those lines. I literally looked over, saw them riding backwards, saw them throw the cameras, and said my stupid lines that I said. Same thing with the snake on the road. That's where all of my interview footage came from. There was no script. It was literally just me talking about what was going on right then and there, and whatever popped into my head, including the quote at the very end of the video.
I mean, you ever seen the movie Die Hard? Pretty much every day of my life is like that. That's the only way I can explain it.
The parts arrived and Car Crafters got the axle fixed in like 15 minutes, so I was thankfully back in the car and in my comfort zone. Anyway, we do take 2 on the J-turn with the motorcycles passing. This time I mess up, blow way past my mark. The motorcycle guys had already gone way by and my timing was off. Guess what? We gotta shoot it again. Try it again. This time, I'm dialed. Did I mention that hitting marks is totally different than anything you do in regular drifting? Take 3. Hit the J-turn at the right time. Go to accelerate, grab second gear, and crunch. Break another freaking axle. Oh my God. What am I doing with my life right now? I'm starting to think at this point that either I'm not cut out for drifting and or filming, and or the Mustang is not cut out for drifting and or filming. 15 minutes later, our very last axle is now installed into the car, and it's pretty much the only one in that area, so we cannot break this axle. We decide, for the sake of saving that sucker, to use the very first shot, the one where it kind of looks like I'm crab walking across this weird coating on the surface and then taking off. So that was actually the shot we ended up using, was number 1. The next shot involved us grabbing all of those bags of leaves that we had so kindly picked up for that restaurant and scattered them all over this road. I guess Matt had the foresight to think, hey, it would be really exciting for you to blast through this area and have the leaves blow out of the way instead of just blasting through this road with no leaves on it, because there were no natural leaves on the road. And I'm like, now it makes sense. Now I understand why we were playing groundskeeper to this restaurant. And it worked out because they got this epic shot of me blasting by. Totally worked. The very next shot we were supposed to do was supposed to be the RC car crashing over the toy snake, tumbling a few times, and then landing right in front of Moa's car. Now what I do remember is falling asleep after like the 10th or 15th try to get this thing to actually head towards the car. It kept going off onto the other side of the road, or it would go straight, or it would be 20 feet short. Anyway, I took a small nap because we were up really early and I'd already broken axles and I was already bummed out and I wasn't doing much other than sitting there. So I literally fell asleep in the car. They finally got the damn RC car to land right in front of the car. They said, Dan, you're up. You got to do some more acting. And I'm like, oh, sick, more acting. At this point, I get out. I poke the RC car like it's a live thing because I'm an idiot redneck, and look in a direction, and that was that shot. It was like 2 hours worth of trying to get that done. The very next shot was me saying, hey, wouldn't it be funny if I sniffed their tracks, like that's how I was gonna search them out? And so I did. I got down on the ground, I did a half push-up, I sniffed those mustard-smelling burnout marks, and I looked in the direction that they were going. Completely retarded, but that was actually, other than the interview stuff, the first flavor of Officer Dan in the video. The next set of shots were going to be of them in the car with me. And any shifting shot that you see in the video was all filmed at this one spot, sitting on the side of the road, turning on the car 10 times, shifting 10 times. Cool. All the interior shots are done. There were some where there was a guy in the car with me later on, but for the most part, the shifting and the starting and the e-brake and everything was stationary, sitting in this one little parking spot. Movie magic. Then we filmed the exit of the hidden parking spot that I was in, where I did a very ginger burnout onto the road as to not break yet another axle. Now we finally get to the first corner I would actually be drifting in. I was pumped. Now this was a big, wide open right-hander sweeper, and there wasn't really a whole lot of places where camera guys could be. So instead, Matt had the great idea to tape 2 GoPros together, put them in the middle of the road, and said, all right, go for it. And I'm like, I'm probably going to hit those things. And he was like, that's okay. We've got like 30 of them. And I was like, all right, whatever. Well, I'm just going to huck it and see what happens. So first thing out, I huck it and immediately destroy 2 GoPros. I'm like, sick, there's 800 bucks. So he taped 2 more together, stuck them in the road, and I went over the middle of them somehow between all 4 tires and didn't touch them at all. His shot worked out absolutely perfectly. Now we slowly work our way up the hill, getting B-roll, rolling shots, and little filler things that we can do in between. On the hood mounted to me, camera shots, got some exterior shots, just all of the B-roll footage that we could grab. Now, at this point we've also found out that the blower is getting super hot and pissing coolant all over the windshield, which you can see in some of the shots in the video. When the blower gets super hot, the car feels like it's a 150 horsepower KA car, and it absolutely cannot spin the 295s that are attached to the back of this thing. So we have to sit and wait for this thing to cool down. This would be a problem that would plague us the entire rest of the shoot. One bonus to this happening was, as I would be sitting in the car waiting for things to cool down, I would randomly see all the media guys from Icon pop up and run at top speed away from something. It turns out there's a lot of actual rattlesnakes around the area that we were, and so they would hear the rattles and GTFO. So every once in a while I'd get to see a dude sprinting for his life away from a rattlesnake. We had 2 toy snakes on this shoot, and neither of them were the ones hiding in the shrubberies and or rocks, scaring all of the media gentlemen away. The next shot we needed to get was going through the gate. Now I parallel parked the Mustang in between the gate, and it was too long. So the gate was shorter than the Mustang was wide, so there wasn't an actual way to slide through completely sideways, so I had to do what I could. Now we opened up the gate all the way and it just wasn't as exciting, so we closed half the gate and I just had to kind of snake it through because it wasn't wide enough to fit. And thanks to the foresight of Matt Sanders and the Icon crew, we had hired a drone operator to hoist the DSLR up on an 8-rotor drone and film from in the air, which is mind-blowing to me because this was new technology in 2011 for sure, and I can't even imagine how expensive this was. So the drone went up, and on its 8-minute battery, we only had a few takes to get it right. Luckily, I nailed it on the first try, grabbed the e-brake, slid through the gate, and continued onwards up the hill. So we made our way up the hill slowly but surely, filming corner by corner until we were about halfway up. We decided to call it an evening because the light was getting dim and we still had another day of shooting ahead of us. We headed back to town, grabbed dinner, gave each other a bunch of high fives and hugs for how awesome the day was, and we talked about the shots for the next day. Now, drifting with motorcycles is completely different than drifting with cars. In a car, we start off very, very quickly and we end up going really slow by the end of the course. Motorcycles drifting, it's the exact opposite. They start off very, very slow and then they end up going at the speed of light by the time they're done. So matching that up with a car is increasingly difficult, and then throw in the fact that there's hills and very narrow road, and it makes it even more difficult to get the shots that we were trying to get. On a side note, motorcycle guys can go through 1 set of tires per day, while drifting where I was going through tires left and right. So screw you guys and your tire consumption abilities. When I went to go by Nick's room to hang out with him, they were fixing Nick's bike inside the hotel room. There was grease everywhere. I was just like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? And they just continued to do that. They were watching TV and fixing the bike in the hotel room. Wish we could do that with cars. Once again, we awake at the crack of dawn. We get out, we have some bagels, we go over the shots for the day, and we head up to where we stopped filming the day before. At this point, we get tons of in-car footage, we get tons of chase footage, we get exterior shots, we get more drone shots. They get just the bikes, they get just me, they get both of us together. We are smashing these shots out and everything's working out just dandy. It was super cold this morning, so the car wasn't overheating as much as it did, so we were able to smash out those shots post haste. Now Matt said he wanted something a little bit out of control for this corner, and I decided it'd be a good idea to test the initial D hypothesis. Could I hook the inside tire of my car around this corner and make it look aggressive as I'm chasing these dudes? Well, technically chasing Matt. And I tried it, and it did not work whatsoever. It kept coming off and I'd drop it back down, and it kept coming off and I'd drop it back down. But anyway, you Initial D fans, I tried. Now, shortly after that, we got the money shot of me coming out behind the motorcycle, looking back whilst at full throttle, mind you, and checking out to see if my dumb ass was still behind them. This money shot was epic. Cheers to money shots. Now, things were going super smooth at this point. I'm like, wow, the car's hanging in there, the motorcycles are hanging in there. Sometimes it gets a bit weird with the motorcycles stopping around a blind corner and me coming in at full speed and being like, I gotta slam on the brakes and avoid these dudes and not go off a cliff. And then, boom! Nick comes down from a wheelie, his fork seal blows out, it covers his front brake rotor in goo, and he has no brakes and goes flying off a 8-foot hill into some dirt. Holy smokes, is he okay? We all rush over, and he's over there casually picking up his bike like no big deal, like nothing happened, and pushes it back up onto the road, does a wheelie, everything's fine. Man's man. Now we snake our way all the way up to the very top of the hill. We get some outstanding shots in the meantime. But I have fallen more and more in love with this road as time has gone by, and it is my favorite thing I've ever driven on. It is rough, it is raw, there is danger everywhere, and somehow we are making it work with cars and motorcycles. So we get to the very top at the gravel parking lot, and Matt says, hey, it's time for you to do more acting. And I'm like, it was now time for me to don a gun. Now, I'd fired rifles before at military school, but I'd never actually even held a handgun, let alone fired one off. Now, this one was just a .22 shooting blanks, but still, it intimidated the hell out of old Officer Dan. They had me get out of the car, point the gun down at him.
I mean, you ever seen the movie Die Hard? Pretty much every day of my life is like that. That's the only way I can explain it.
And yell a bunch of things. So I just yelled a bunch of stuff and then fired the gun. And as you can see, I flinched quite a bit. Luckily, we only had to do that once. Now, for the audience, it's expected that you thought that I may have shot one of the motorcycle guys, but instead, I shot a rattlesnake that may or may not have harmed them. And it was a toy rattlesnake, by the way. Thanks, PETA. Hashtag happy ending for everybody. The shoot was done. I'd corralled those motorcycle guys and saved them from being bit by a snake via gunfire. Now, the Icon crew took this epic shot of all of the crew and actors. All of us were super pumped. Everything had went basically well, other than the broken axles and the overheating and the motorcycle problem that they fixed in a hotel room, and we all headed back down the mountain. Everything was fine at this point. Now, this is where I insert the life lesson of don't be greedy, don't be an idiot, don't take that last run when you don't have to and you've had a very, very good day of driving. Just don't do it. Don't be a moron when things are going well. I decided to don my last set of tires and take Ernie Vigil for a ride up the mountain. He hadn't been drifting before, and I wanted to show him how fun it could be. We headed off up the hill, sliding around all the corners that I'd slid at least 10 times each the past 3 days. We passed the huge drop-offs, everything's looking okay, and I enter into one particular corner. Now, I did it in the same speed, in the same amount of angle, and the same scrubbing that I did in the Mustang, time after time after time, except for one thing I didn't take into consideration. Mustang was on 295s, which actually had grip, and the 240 was on 245s, which were now worn out for me drifting all the way up this hill. So this accident was literally 100% my dumbass's fault. I cannot blame anything else for this. I misjudged the corner and didn't have enough grip to actually power through. I went off of an 8-foot hill, flipped over, had my head out the freaking window, and landed back on the wheels. Fun fact, this was the same corner that Nick crashed on earlier in the shoot. We both landed in basically the same spot. There's some bad juju in that corner. Maybe self-induced, but nonetheless, some bad juju. Now in the car, it felt like we'd rolled like 5 or 6 times and I was freaking out. My head had hit the roll cage on the way back in because I didn't tighten my belt enough, and I was slightly concussed. So immediately upon landing, the first words out of my mouth in a completely Russian accent were,
Holy fuck balls!
Holy shit.
We done flipped it!
"Holy fuck balls, we done flipped it." And then the very next words out of my mouth were,
You okay, guy? I'm okay. Are you sure? Yeah. I just got the wind knocked out.
still in a Russian accent. Now, I didn't hear anything from Ernie, who was sitting in the passenger seat, because he'd gotten the wind knocked out of him and he couldn't talk. So I'm sitting over here like, I'm pretty sure that I just killed Edub. I do not want to even look over there. I'm scared to look over there. And then finally Ernie mutters some and says he's okay. And I'm like, oh, thank God that Ernie's okay. I didn't kill Ernie. Then Ernie turns with his camera to me and he's like,
I'm sorry, buddy.
Hey, it happens. We get new chassis, we make a new car.
Yeah, but that sucks. We make a flip.
Yes, we did a full flip rotation.
still in a Russian accent. I was fully concussed at this point. I had no idea what was going on. And we get out to assess the damage and the car is completely totaled. Sick. That's not what I wanted at the end of this shoot. That's not the way I wanted to end this video. Everything had gone so well up into this point. Why did I have to take these last laps? I did, and that's what happened. Now, deep inside, I was actually very, very bummed at this point. This was the best car that I had ever driven, and I'm still sad to this day that I totaled that sucker. Now, since there was nobody else on the hill at this point, and obviously my car wasn't going anywhere, Ernie and I decided to walk down the rest of the mountain in a walk of shame. Now, we also didn't have cell phone service at this point, so 25 minutes of walking down this hill, we hear a scooter blasting up. It's Nick. He's come to our rescue. So we all pile onto the scooter, nuts to butts, three-way, all the way down to the bottom, let everybody know that I'm an idiot and I crashed my car, and we take every available truck and or car up to the top to try to tow it out of its spot in a meadow. We end up towing the car all the way back down since there wasn't a flatbed to put it on, and I destroyed one of my SSR Speedstars and a P45R by putting gigantic flat spots in them from towing it all the way down. Now, I'm still a little bit dead inside as this is happening. I'm putting on my happy face like, hey, no problem, everything's fine. But really, I'm devastated. We load it into the trailer, we head back into town, we go to dinner, and I'm again trying to put on my smiley face. I'm embarrassed. I feel like a complete moron for crashing the car. I put Ernie's life at risk. It was just like all of these emotions were hitting me when I was concussed, and it was a bad time for me. So at dinner, everybody was trying to be positive. The whole rest of the shoot went well. The Mustang was still alive, and I didn't know Jim like 60 grand for a new Cobra. That's styled. That night, I called up Andy and said, hey man, I think your cage saved my life, so I really, really appreciate you. Thank you for saving my life. And I think Ernie and I really, really bonded in this experience, as unfortunate as that is. But I think we kind of became much better friends after that, after sharing a death-defying experience together. And this was still one of the best experiences I've had to date. Working with all of these professionals and working with Nick and Ernie and getting to be a part of something so big and so ambitious was very, very humbling to me. And that was still overweighing the fact that I had just destroyed and totaled my pride and joy. One of those legends, Matt Sanders, had this to say about working with me on the shoot.
Dan was great to work with on camera. He can drive, he's funny, he can act, but I'm not saying he crashed that car on purpose, but the look on his face when Ernie took the last Snickers bar at our craft services table was disturbing. And if I was Ernie, I would have never got in that car.
Now, Nick said this. And Ernie also said these positive words.
Damn it, Dan. Again. Ever since we wrecked, you got me thinking I'm a damn jet car driver. Fuck me all up, man. I ride bikes.
We then packed everything up, headed back to Albuquerque. I remember getting super sick on the way back, so that really sucked. And that is where I'm gonna end this long ass video. In the next couple of videos, I'll be going over the actual release of Drift 2, linking back up with the Keep Drifting Fun Boys for another round of fun, my second season of Pro-Am, and all of the antics that go in between that. Much love for all of you that have tuned in and watched this journey to this point, and thank you for being a part of the birth of Officer Dan. Please subscribe for more of this craziness because it only gets nuttier from here on out. And I'll see you next time on the flip side. Officer Dan, out. Ah, it's some damn good Scotch right there, boys. Archer, what are you doing? You some sort of an idiot? My God. Can't believe I spilled that into there. Anyway, I'll see you next time.